We've all heard the story of the Great Flood. A storm sent by God to wipe out evil from the earth. But what if that's not the full truth? What if the flood didn't just destroy people, but something else? Something older, smarter, and not human. Stories from all over the world say the same thing. And the ruins left behind say even more. This wasn't just a flood. It was a reset. And now, the truth is starting to rise. What the flood really erased. You've heard the story. A massive flood sent by God to punish the wicked. To wash the world clean and start over. But, what if that's not the real reason? What if the flood wasn't sent to punish people, but to erase something much older, and far more dangerous? Not evil. Not sin. But a lost civilization, smarter than us. Stronger than us. And not even human. They say it's just a myth. But myths don't leave behind ruins. They don't leave scars carved deep into the earth. What if we weren't the only ones here? What if something else lived before us? And the flood wiped them out overnight? A whole world, gone. Buried under oceans and silence. This isn't just a story. It's a forgotten truth. And it's finally rising to the surface. The flood is not a fable. If that lost world truly existed, wouldn't someone have remembered it? They did. All over the world stories were told. Not just in the Bible, but in over 200 cultures. Different people. Different languages. But the same warning. A God. A flood. A chosen survivor. A world washed away. The names change. The details shift. But the bones of the story stay the same. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of South America. From ancient temples in India to mountains in China. They all remembered the same nightmare. The flood didn't just happen. It was witnessed. Survived. And passed down as a warning again and again. Not fiction. Not legend. A memory buried in myth. Waiting to be believed. Myths with teeth. If this was just a myth, why did so many people tell the same story? Before they ever met each other? The same flood. The same warning. The same survivors. Again, and again, and again. How? These cultures didn't share maps, gods, or languages. And yet, they all remembered the same thing. Why? Because it happened. Not once. Not in one place. But everywhere. At the same time. And that's when it hits you. What if these stories aren't myths at all? What if they're eyewitness accounts? Passed down through whispers and carvings. Through temples, tablets, and bloodlines. We always called it a fable. But what if it has teeth? What if this was the moment the world ended? And no one ever told us the whole truth? The earth never forgets. If the flood was real, and the stories are true, then the earth should remember, too. And it does. There's a place in Washington state. A land so torn, it looks like a war zone. Massive ripples frozen in stone. Canyons with no rivers. Valleys too deep for their streams. Something ripped through it. Fast. Violent. Unstoppable. For decades, scientists had no answer. Until one man, J. Harlan Brett, said the unthinkable. This land was carved by a flood. A flood so massive. It drowned entire regions in a matter of days. They laughed at him. They called it impossible. But he was right. It took 50 years, satellites, and brutal evidence. But the truth finally surfaced. The earth had spoken. And what it showed was not just water. It was destruction. Now ask yourself. If one place tells the story in stone, how many more are still hiding the scars? This was a reset button. The Scablands were just one piece. One scar on the body of the earth. But what if they weren't alone? Across the planet, we see signs of sudden destruction. Not slow erosion. Not time. But force. Speed. Collapse. In India, the Gulf of Cambay. Deep beneath the sea. Roads, buildings, patterns, a lost city, swallowed whole. In the Black Sea basin, flood layers so thick, they rewrote the shoreline. And in Japan, near Yonaguni, a staircase carved into the ocean floor. Perfect lines. Right angles. They say it's natural. But nothing about it feels natural. These places didn't just flood. They disappeared. Fast, violently, without warning. This wasn't erosion. This was a reset. The world changed. And something went under with it. Maybe not just a city. Maybe not just a people. But an entire chapter of history. Ripped out. And drowned. If a world really was erased, there should be ruins. And there are. scattered across the planet. Massive structures that don't make sense. Too old. Too advanced. Too perfect. In Turkey, there's Göbekli Tepe. Over 11,000 years old. Stone pillars weighing 20 tons, carved with precision. Built long before any known civilization. Who made it? Farming tribes? With what tools? In Bolivia, Pumapunku. Stone blocks cut like machine parts. Fitted together like Lego. By people who didn't even have the wheel. And then, they vanished. Many of these sites show signs of sudden damage. Collapse. Abandonment. And the deeper you dig, the older, stronger, and more advanced the construction gets. It doesn't add up. Because the farther back you go, the smarter it looks. What kind of world did the flood really destroy? And why does no one want to talk about it? The whisper of Mu. What if all these ruins belong to a single lost world? Not just a city. Not just a culture. But a mother civilization. They called it Mu. Long before Egypt, before Sumer. Mu was said to rule the world. A place of knowledge, technology, and power. In the 19th century, archaeologists laughed. There was no proof. Just whispers. Just stories. Until James Churchward claimed he saw the impossible. Ancient tablets, written by the people of Mu themselves. He said Mu was real. A vast continent. Wiped away by the flood. Too fast. Too perfect. Gone overnight. But pieces remained. On Easter Island, the Moai statues still stand. Giant stone faces carved with precision that baffles modern engineers. The locals say they were built to honor their ancestors. And the knowledge? It wasn't invented. It was passed down. But passed down from who? Were they even human? Passed down from who? That's the question no one wants to ask. Because we always assume. These ancient builders were human. Just like us, only older. But what if they weren't? What if the ancestors behind all this knowledge weren't human at all? For years, we've seen dinosaurs as mindless beasts. Big. Loud. Dumb. But science is changing that. The Maiasaura returned to the same nesting sites every year. They remembered. Planned. Protected their young. They worked in groups, like us. Then there's the Troodon. Small. Fast. With a brain almost the size of a mammal's. It had hands. Depth vision. Intelligence. Some scientists believe, if the world hadn't ended, Troodon could have evolved into something terrifying. A being with language. Tools. Cities. A creature that thinks, like we do. So ask yourself, what really got wiped out by the flood? A primitive beast? Or a civilization no one wants to admit ever existed? Secrets under the sea. If something once ruled this world, its bones wouldn't be in books. They'd be underwater. And now, they're starting to appear. In the Gulf of Cambay, off India's coast. Scientists found something impossible. Massive structures. Stone roads. Perfect grids. An entire city, sitting 100 feet below the sea. Not myths. Not guesses. Real ruins older than any known civilization. Then there's Yonaguni, near Japan. Under the waves lies something that looks like a lost temple. Giant stairs. Carved platforms. Walls cut at right angles. Too sharp to be nature. Too deep to be fake. And in India's ancient legends, they spoke of Dwarka. A golden city swallowed by the ocean. For years, it was just a story. Until divers found the walls. Think about that. Stories we were told were fake. Turning out to be real. These places weren't just abandoned. They were taken. Swallowed by water. Buried in silence. Not over centuries. But in a moment. A flood doesn't just erase history. It sinks it. Knowledge didn't start. It survived. We lost the cities. We lost the people. But we didn't lose everything. Because some knowledge survived. What if the first civilizations after the flood weren't inventing? They were remembering? The Sumerians called the first civilization. Already knew things we shouldn't. Complex math. Astronomy. Even planets we discovered thousands of years later. How? How does the first step look like a final chapter? In Egypt, ancient carvings show strange objects. Things that look like glowing lights. In Bolivia, there's a stone gate that tracks time. Better than some of our clocks. And deep in the sea near Greece, they found a machine. 2,000 years old, built with gears like a computer. Too advanced. Too early. Too perfect to be chance. So where did it come from? Maybe from a world that came before. A world wiped out. But not forgotten. Because across the ancient world, there are whispers. Of teachers. Of survivors. Of those who remembered just enough. To start again. The real cost of the flood. The flood didn't just take lives. It took memory. It took everything. Not just homes and temples. But entire ways of thinking. Science. Energy. Knowledge we still can't explain. We've been trying to rebuild ever since. Blindly, piece by piece. But we don't even know what the full picture looked like. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Because under oceans, beneath rock, hidden by time, may be the remains of a world. So advanced. So powerful. That it had to be erased. Not by accident. Not by nature. But on purpose. And maybe, some part of it still survives. In stone. In story. Or maybe, in us. So ask yourself. Was the flood really just a disaster? Or was it the clean slate someone needed?